Welcome back to our special edition of Face the State at the State Capitol as we break down Governor Lamont's very first budget address. And with us today, the two leaders of the state Senate, Martin Looney and Len Fasano. Senators, thank you for being with us here today.
Good to be with you, Dan.
And I'll begin with you, Senator Looney. What did you think of the governor's speech? What was the highlight of it in your judgment?
Well, I think the highlight was that it was overall a responsible budget presentation. I think the highlight was his commitment to sustained levels of municipal aid, especially education funding. I think is going to be critical for us.
Senator Fasano, your applause was very limited. What didn't you like about it?
Well, I just think it's way too much in taxes, a lot of regressive taxes. There's also in the budget, we did a bipartisan budget 2 years ago, which had a lot of good things in it. It was historic in many ways. And the budget that he produced today, when you read through it, undoes a lot of the stuff that we did in our bipartisan budget. So it gives me concerns that we headed down the path and we have a surplus that now we're changing courses yet again. And I have grave concerns about the fiscal future for the state based upon that.
Let's talk about tolls for a minute, because that was one of the big elements of his agenda, of his next budget. You have been saying that you're against all tolls, correct? Is it feasible, though, that the state can get back on its feet and improve its transportation system without tolls?
Absolutely. First of all, let's talk about tolls a couple ways. Number one, you can't have border tolls, so you got a toll based upon volatility of the traffic. Congestion tolls is what they call them. You have to do that. Number two, nobody has said how much you're going to get charged per mile in the state. So to support tolls without knowing what it's going to cost your constituents is a question mark. Number three, they say, well, we're going to charge out-of-state residents more than in-state residents. And theoretically, you can. But in actuality, you can't stop a Massachusetts resident from buying a Connecticut Easy Pass with Connecticut rates. That happens in Massachusetts. 14% of the transponders in Massachusetts to get Massachusetts rates are bought by people who don't live in Massachusetts. So there's a whole host of issues and mathematical things that you have to do to figure out how much you're going to charge a Connecticut resident, and no one has told us what that figure is. So that gives me very skeptical about tolls. And finally, prioritize progress, which is take general obligation bonding. And the governor said today, well, we're on a debt diet. We can meet his debt diet. We can figure it out. We've already done it on paper. And if he reached out to me, we could talk about it.
Which of the two toll proposals do you favor, Senator Looney?
Well, obviously, on tolls, I favor the more broad-based tolls. I think it's essential that we have to have tolling if we are going to be serious about all vehicles, if we're going to be serious about meeting our transportation needs, because the gas tax does not project to raise the revenue that we need going forward. More people are buying fuel-efficient cars, electric cars, hybrid cars. If we are serious about our transportation needs, we have to have tolls. And with all due respect to Senator Fasano and the proposal, I think the Priorities for Progress initiative would leave us with almost no resources to bond for any other purpose other than transportation. There are significant needs. And also, you've asked about things I liked in the governor's proposal. Two other major things. First of all, I think his commitment to paid family and medical leave and his commitment to raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour incrementally over time is much to be applauded.
You know, a lot of your constituents are going to complain about paying more taxes and more money and perhaps even more tolls. And we're talking, the governor said he wasn't going to do 80 gantries. He's going to do only 50-something gantries, as I recall. A gantry, by the way, it's a word we're going to be hearing a lot of. That's the overhead toll thing where you drive through it. No toll booth. There's no toll takers or toll booth operators. It's be done through an Easy Pass system. Is 50 too many?
First of all,
I mean, is there anywhere room for compromise with the Republicans?
It's a very easy math problem. You want to raise $600 million, so you got to take the amount of cars that you're going to tax, right, times whatever you're going to tax them to get that number. If you do 50 gantries, which is the toll booths, if you were overheads, you're not going to be having that many cars, because there'll be some areas that people obviously won't have the tolls, so they're going to get off, which means you got to go up more on the rate. It's a math problem. It's very simple. What the problem that's missing here is they're not telling you how much they're going to charge you per mile. That is the key, and because they don't know. No one has done the math. Finally, with all due respect to my colleague, prioritized progress does not crowd out other bonding to the extent that you can't bond for anything else. It's taking bonding and saying we need to prioritize what is essential to Connecticut, not what you want, but what you need.
So to be clear, just for our viewers' sake, is there any toll proposal where the Republicans might find a compromise? In exchange for supporting some tolls, you would get X, Y, or Z?
The answer is no, and may I also add, in this governor's proposal, we took tax on new cars and put them in the transportation fund to help fund that. He removes that money from the transportation fund. So if he wants to do transportation, and that's a high priority, why is he defunding the transportation fund? Those are questions of games that we went through the last administration that I'm not going to be going through again with this administration if they want to put a bipartisan budget together.
Senator, let's talk about some of these sin taxes that will be introduced on vaping, plastic bags, and so forth. Do you think that will go over well with your fellow Democrats?
Well, we are at the very beginning of our budget process. In other words, the governor's budget is a proposed budget. Now the legislature takes over, and we, through our Appropriations Committee, subcommittee structure, will go through everything in fine detail. The Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee dealing with the revenue side. Some of those proposals the governor made will ultimately be in the final recommended budget. Some will not. I think some of the proposed sin tax that he indicated that those were not primarily for a revenue purpose, but for a behavior modification purpose. I think we'll look at them all one at a time. I think a tax on sugary sodas has some merit. At what level, we'll have to examine. But that's all part of the grist for our mill as we go forward.
I want to
also,
talk
the vaping tax, I think, makes sense.
You already voiced your support for the higher minimum wage. What's your take on that, Senator?
I think we'd have a conversation. If we reduce the cost of business, we certainly can have a conversation on raising the minimum wage over time. I think Governor Lamont's idea of starting, I think, was 2020, but I may be wrong about that. Raising it over time, I think, for businesses to get ready to deal with that issue, if you have a quantifiable business reduction in cost.
Senator Len Fasano, Senator Martin Looney, we thank you so much for being in the program today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll hear from the leaders of the House of Representatives here at the state capitol.